Hi, okay, year three. This is your afternoon lesson for history underneath our topic of World War II, and our topic title for this half term is Wartime West Horton. So you might be wondering why you see Mr. Pryall on your screen for this. Just to make it easier, I've put together a little video just to support you with your first couple of lessons for history and topic this half term. What I'd like you to do today is I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to focus on an element called a timeline. Okay, so we're going to start off by looking at a timeline, and that's in order to help you sort of understand where we are when we start off at the beginning date of World War II, which is 1939. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Okay, so your learning objective for today, which is on your Seesaw activity, is learning objective or to understand a historical timeline. Okay, and this should hopefully give you a little bit more clarity as to where dates and things like that fit in, because it's very, very important that you understand where in our history of human beings that World War II fits into our sort of progression as human beings. So I wanted to show you a simple form of a timeline, and you might never have seen one of these before. So I just thought I'd sort of put something together just to sort of support you. Hopefully in years 2 and in years 1 you've had a look at timelines just to sort of introduce you to dates and such. You know, hopefully you can see on here that you've got one of your key bits of learning from last year, the Great Fire of London, which was in 1666. And some of you have already studied Florence Nightingale as a topic from the last year that I definitely know about. I need to make you aware that the timeline runs in date order. So this date, when Jesus Christ was born, is the year 0. So on this particular timeline, it starts at the year 0 and works along in jumps to the major key events of humanity. So obviously in 1066, you got the Battle of Hastings, moving up the date lines and the Middle Ages as a period for human beings. You move along to key date of the Black Death, terrible plague, something that you might learn about in the next few years at primary school and particularly in high school. However, as you can see, each time we're jumping along in dates that go from the smaller numbers right up to the bigger numbers. And if you can see my arrow at the end here, of present day of 2021. And that's also shown at the bottom here when you're looking at the sort of key events of the last 100 or so years. If you look at this bottom part to our timeline, key events, you've got the year 1900 onwards, and that includes some very, very, very significant events of the last 121 years. So you've got our first British astronaut to head up into space, to travel to the International Space Station of Tim Peake. You might have all heard of him. We've studied Nelson Mandela across year 3 so far. We've looked at Queen Elizabeth. We've discussed Neil Armstrong on the moon already this year. However, there are some key figures that you might be able to recognise. Winston Churchill, which will come underneath our topic for this half term. Winston Churchill is one of our house leaders, and one of your houses is named after Churchill, and that's after Winston Churchill, who was Prime Minister of our country during the Second World War. To start off with, we're looking at the key date of World War II, which started in 1939 and finished in 1945, underneath this heading here. That is where, between these two arrows, that is where the key date that we're going to look at for this half term, World War II, those two key dates and everything in between, that is what we're going to be studying. Moving on. So your activity for today is to create a timeline. Now, what I have asked for each class to do is to perhaps have a simple bit of equipment such as a toilet roll to hand, Now, hopefully you've all got a bit of toilet roll. If not, don't worry. You can always just draw this out on a piece of paper from the back of one of your red or blue maths or English books that you've got at home. So a timeline is constructed. Basically, we're going to focus on the years 1939 to 45, but I thought it'd be nice to sort of construct your own first and to understand, key concepts of knowledge of history, of how dates and figures are easily recognizable by using a timeline, I suppose. Okay, so we start at the year 0 and we move along our timeline. We move along in dates towards the future. Okay, if we move backwards down the timeline, we're looking into the past. That's a really key fundamental skill to understand, because the timeline moves backwards through the years, and you can recognize that if you're very good at maths. You recognize that the year 2021 is the year that we've just started, and obviously if you move backwards down that timeline, you're heading back towards the year 0, very, very significant point of where Christ was born. Okay, everything in between is what you've just seen on that key events timeline. Obviously, there's some very, very, very significant points along that timeline, but we're going to focus roughly about here, between the years 1939 to 45. Okay, so your topic and your task for today, year 3, is to have a look and try and construct your own timeline using the key events that are attached to this seesaw activity. So if you have a look at your templates, you should have some little squares that look like this, and on each square you've got a significant event and you have a date to follow. Okay, so with your adults at home, or those of you that are very, very, very good at maths, you can have a look at constructing your own timeline. Now, we did this in class. This one obviously shows the toilet roll being outstretched, and the year 0 is this way. Unfortunately, I've taken the photograph the wrong way just to show you, coming towards the year 2021. What I'd like you to construct is a timeline that heads from the year 0 all the way to the years 2021, and your teachers will then be able to assess you on your knowledge of times and time zones. Okay, to show you another picture. Construct the timeline by adding those key events in date order. So every event must be in order, heading from the earliest, which is this would be the smallest date. So the earliest in history is always considered as the smallest date. So for example, the smallest date might be, say, the year 43 AD. And AD means Anno Domini, which is a Latin phrase for basically after Christ. Okay, after he passed away. Every day after Christ passed away is considered to be AD. Anything that's before the year 0 is considered to be BC. There's another Latin phrase, but basically it means before Christ. Okay. Last but not least, we're going to move on, and over the next few weeks we're going to talk about some emotive vocabulary to do with this topic. But for now, construct your timelines, have a look at my images to support you, message your teachers on Seesaw if you need any support, but other than that, have a go putting those dates into date order at home. You can even spread it out on your tables, on the floor. You could help your brothers, your siblings would support that at home, and I'm sure your adults would. But have a go, see what you think, see what you can get done. Thanks very much, everyone.